Greetings, salutations, and good now. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. And welcome to our weekly forecast for the 29th of June up until the 6th of July 2026. Now, this week is going to be major because it kick starts with a full moon on the Cancer Capricorn axis. Now, Cancer is, as I like to call it, affairs of the heart, the people, places, things, circumstances, situations, activities that make you feel most safe, make you feel nurtured, make you feel protected, gives you that sense of belonging, right? Your family, your tribe, your home, just the essence of, feeling protected with the ability or the stage to grow. On the opposite side, right, which is the polar opposite, we have something similar. However, Capricorn likes to initiate material things, stability, structure, organization, having something to stand on. Capricorn derives its traits and its characteristics from the 10th house. So in some way, shape, or form, it constitutes our public life or how we're seen in the public arena. And so it's going to be huge because it's a full moon. And so there's a possibility for that to be expressed and seen outwardly and openly. Cancer, there's a heavy emphasis of protection, and so that could bleed. Well, the shadow side of Cancer, it could get overprotective, and so that bleeds or blends into the Capricorn energy of being super defensive, right? Or cold or stoic. And again, it gets that from the nature of its ruler, which would be Saturn, right? All about boundaries and restrictions and cold and being, methodical and strategic and slow. However, Capricorn could be a bit, a bit more punchy because it's cardinal, right? They like to create and initiate things. However, because it's the earth like quality, the earth like quality takes a bit more time to manifest, right? However, they do have some magical powers that, they could go out and, use their Capricorn energies to initiate something a bit more rapid than the other signs could do it. However, they need to also balance those energies because they could do a lot of things to, create or initiate or get, stability materialistically, but emotionally they don't have it, right? They use their materialism to cover up what's happening in their private life. And so there's a bit of push and pull between your affairs of the heart, the people, places, things, circumstances that make you feel safe. And so there may be your home, there may be some particular individuals or figures that are being highlighted right now, either for good, bad, or indifferent. Hopefully we're planting the right seeds, so during this full moon, as much as you could control the situation, you've created a contained environment for you to relax, for you to enjoy, for you to maybe indulge. Don't overdo it. However, you're at peace, right? Emotionally and materialistically. And so during this full moon, you're seen as a person who could, enjoy your private life, have a good emotional foundation, but also be seen in the public as someone who take care of their duties, responsibilities, obligations. All right, so that's the full moon kicking off on the 29th. Now, I like to carve out about 3 days of put in minimal effort, right? I like to go hard before the full moon, but on the full moon, I'm chilling, right? Or I would like to be relaxing. And so that's how I participate in the lunation cycle. Also, I know that after this full moon in Capricorn, it's going to slide into Aquarius, right? And in Aquarius, there's Pluto retrograde. So we need to take it easy, right? Because Pluto, doom, gloom, death, and destruction is definitely going to tear up things, especially when it comes to things that are foundational, that are no longer helpful and useful for your personal journey or evolution. So that's happening. So I'm, carving out a nice space for me to relax, and hopefully, when Pluto hits, I'm Gucci, right? Now, as the moon wanes, there's different ways to look at the lunation cycle. I did a whole video on it, so you guys could go check it out. And it's so Funny, I made that video probably a year and a half ago, and so I'm just re-uploading some old content from an old channel up to this new channel. But that one was quite timely. So when it comes to lunation, in terms of the waxing, waning, the quarterly indications, half moon, full moon, new moon, all of that type of stuff, some suggest that you participate in the manner of the moon, and there's some schools that participate in the opposite manner of the moon. And so for me, as the moon is waxing, or it's, fulling up, right? I'm putting in a lot of energy into the mood, the moon, the emotion, the manifestation, the magic, whatever I'm trying to manifest at that point in time. When the moon is full, I'm giving thanks. I'm trying to protect those things that I was working on, or as it gets full. And as it's waning, well, we are gaining, we're receiving all of the fruits of our labor. That's how I operate with it. Okay. So, during this time, we're relaxing, just observing, having fun. And then, we're going to be playing a bit of defense, trying to receive and protect those things. Sun is in Cancer doing his thing. However, Jupiter is going to be sliding into Leo on the 30th. And so there's going to be a major shift. Jupiter was exalted in Cancer. If you get more classical or traditional, you got to look at, the different positions where he's more dignified, has more rulerships. But for the most part, we know Jupiter has been exalted in Cancer. And during exaltations, it's like you're a dignified guest, right? Things kind of just go your way, right? You can't do anything wrong. And Jupiter is that, what we want to call him, big uncle of blessings and opportunities, and see what you're doing and just put a little energy into it, and a little expansion, a little ideas, and a little experience, you know what I'm saying, for you to get bigger and larger and greater. And so we know when Jupiter is coming around, whether you're into bad, good, or indifferent, there's going to be an expansion. That has been happening in our private life. And Jupiter has been there for about a year or so, and now he's going to be sliding into Leo. And so Cancer derives its characteristics from the fourth house, which is your private life, affairs of the heart. But the fifth house is a grand stage energy, where we take all of the things that we accumulate in our private life, in the private space, in our comfort zone, and be so comfortable at it that we could express it to the world, right? And it looks like entertainment. It looks like something that people could enjoy, indulge in. People could connect. It looks creative. And so Leo is sort of like the grand stage energy. And when you look at it, we're getting down into the summer. The sun is literally, or it seems like the sun is closer. And so it's illuminating, this side of the earth, creating this grand stage theme. And so because Jupiter, as I describe him, is that big uncle who is always gonna sprinkle some blessings, whether you're doing something good, bad, or indifferent. He's like, yeah, man, go on, do your thing, man, go on, do your thing. Here's some energy, here's some influence, here's some exposure, here's an experience, here's some wisdom that you could add, or here's the opportunity for you to go and get that wisdom. And it's going to be in an area where it's in the public arena, right? Well, depending on what house is in for you, it's going to play out differently. But the Leo zodiac in and of itself is ruled by the sun, fixed expression, fixed creativity, fixed emotion. And so just pouring out your uniqueness and creativity when it's your time to shine. Please don't have the Leo stage, because everybody wants to shine, right? And so when Jupiter moves there, it's going to be a major shift. So something that comes to my mind is being quite protective or selective of the things that you want to be seen for, how you want to be recognized. And if there's anything that blows up, whether good, bad, or indifferent, because we know Jupiter is that big uncle who's going to come and sprinkle some bread or bring a connection into your life or bring an opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So you got to know what you're trying to expand, what you're trying to grow, and how you could position yourself for big uncle to come through and give you those opportunities or those blessings. So, for example, it's like, all right, you know, you really want to be into music. You know, you really want to be into music, right? But because, you know, however your mindset is or whatever your worldview or your situation is, you're putting more time and more energy into other things to support the music that you want to do, right? I'm just giving an example, and this is like a living example. So you're doing all of these things to create this foundation, you know, for your creativity or what's not, which isn't a bad thing. But when big uncle comes through now, it's like, yo, Neff, what are you working on? And you're like, yo, Unc, I'm really working on, you know, this business, this candles business. I'm also working on this thing over here. I'm trying to be able to make this ends over here and make these ends over here. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm really trying to do XYZ. And Big Unc is like, okay, I see what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Let me add to whatever is going on. And the Big Unc goes and drops a whole lot of influence, a whole lot of experience, a whole lot of wisdom, bringing some connections. Local and international influences or influencers of that sort, you know, just going with the example. And it's like, boom, whatever you're working on kind of blows up, so it takes off, right? And then you're sitting back like, damn, Big Unc really blessed me up, man. And this thing is taking off, but it's not really what you want, though, right? And so you're looking at Big Unc like, yo, Big Unc, I really wanted to be doing this music thing, but Unc is watching you like, but no, cause like I saw you doing this other business and doing these other things, and so I help you to do that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you got recognition and you could be seen doing this thing, and then in the back of your mind it's like, damn, I should have just told Unc, I should have just focused on the music, I should have just focused on the creativity. So when Big Unc comes through, you know what I'm saying, he blessed me up in that way. And so that's an example of, you know, the type of mindset that you need to be going into as Jupiter is sliding into Leo, positioning yourself for Big Unc to come and just endorse the thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's a certain level of balance there and mindfulness. You also got to see what house is aspecting it in your natal chart. So for example, if it's happening in the first house, maybe that's your personal, you know, situation. So the personal people, places, things, circumstances that constitute your personality, your ego, your personal issues, personal triumphs, things that you have to personally overcome, things that are super individual to you. Then there's going to be a certain level of expansion there. So maybe your personal brand could be expanded, you know, your image, your confidence, things that constitute, you know, your confidence, the things that make you confident. And so that leads into the things that you're competent at. And so the things that you kind of personally interact with on a day-to-day basis, there may be a expansion there. So let's say you're a mechanic, people know you personally to just be about cars or whatever, right? So everything you're personally involved in, and I'm saying the people, places, circumstances, and situations that are most personal to you have to do with cars, right? And so when Jupiter slides down in the first house, I'm saying maybe you get a couple more cars because you're personally invested. Just as an example, now let's say you have this in, let's say, the seventh house, the house of relationships, right? And so you got Jupiter sliding in to your seventh house, bringing some expansion to, you know, your partners, whether they may be romantic or business wise. And so business partners coming in, or you being able to strike bigger, better deals, or have more opportunities, you know, for partnerships or rivalries, right? Because it's also I think competitors and enemies and stuff like this. And so you got to look out for competitors or people who are going to be challenging you, right? It's opposite to the first house. And so things that are either partnering or competing against you, you know, there could be an expansion or some opportunities there. And so it just kind of depends what house is aspecting you at. but the same sentiment remains of things shifting from private into public. And so, what do you want to have in the public arena? Then we're gonna have my battery died, so I can't pull up the specific date. But shortly after, Mars is going to be conjuncting Uranus in Gemini, and I'm a bit pissed that my computer shut off because I can't get the specific date. And I had some keynotes that I wanted to tap into, but we're gonna do it quick and dirty. Shout out to Michael Bryan from the Oracular School of Astrology. I've been diving more into that branch of astrology because I don't know if you guys know, but I learned astrology the hood way. You know what I'm saying? Like real life. Also, just from hood people on the internet and on the internet, and from farming and gardening, and taking all of my agricultural background and applying it to the knowledge that I'm now accumulating. And so I have that background of being in the nature and seeing how all of these, well, not all of them because I'm still young, but how a lot of the seasons and placements really affect the nature and the grass and the trees, and how we are able to plant and cultivate food and stuff like that. So anyway, quick and dirty, Mars, hot, right? When I think about Mars, I think about hot and dry. So just imagine if you were hot and dry all the time, like you would be antsy, you would be aggressive, you would be, impulsive, you just want to go, 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 you know what I'm saying? You want to be relieved, so there's frustration, there's tension. When you think about heat as well, in certain situations, you think about pressure. And because I learned astrology the hood way, when you think about heat, who's bringing the heat, right? Like what's the heat, you know what I'm saying, from a hood type of way. Now I don't want to get too deep into it, but we down and like quick and dirty, we're trying to stretch it as far as we could go. So it could go in a multitude of ways, as if like you got the heat, right, or something that could make a place or person or situation hot. What does hot mean? Intense, pressure, more people involved. And something that comes out of all of the stuff that we mentioned in terms of heat and pressure and intensity and aggression, it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling. And so Mars, in some way, shape, or form, even though it's considered masculine, it's a masculine feeling. It's a very aggressive feeling of passion, of willpower, of I need to get something done. There's this burning sensation. There's this pressure that needs to be released, right? And so you guys could get the gist of how forceful or how influential this concept of Mars is. This is like this everlasting intensity that cannot be quenched, that cannot be relinquished. It could be comfortable, like I'm super comfortable under this intensity. There's certain people who just thrive under pressure. So there's certain points where it's most comfortable under the intensity and under the pressure, and in the heat or heart of the battle, you just love it, right? It's just like a savage who's bloodthirsty. No matter how chaotic or turmoil is surrounding the person, they're just like, yeah, they're relishing in that moment. And so there is positions and aspects that Mars loves to be in. Even from a hood perspective, they're like drillers and people who really love getting active, right? They love bringing heat, intensity, pressure to a situation. Yo, let's go press them folk, right? And so Mars, again, is heat, intensity, pressure. It could ignite, it could combust, it could explode, it could cause a great deal of emotional fire that could cause a person to do pretty much anything and everything. And so we consider Mars as the driving force or the willpower. Moon is your mood. Sun is how you do things. Now, Mars is going to be conjuncting Uranus, so we got to get quick and dirty with Uranus. Now, Uranus is the higher octane of Mercury that deals with thinking, communicating, processing information. And for me, I like to expand it out and say that it's the wisdom, right? Which is the application of the knowledge that we get from all of the experiences from communicating in our local vicinity, processing that information, refining it, sharing it, and ultimately using it to be more mutable and adaptable and have a different perspective of life. And we could get a lot more down and dirty with that one. But Uranus is the higher octane. And so the information, the knowledge, the wisdom is quite unique to our individual perspective. It comes from sources that are beyond this plane, i.e., Uranus, which is not a part of the classical, traditional, astrological worldview. And so we see these as higher influences. We see these as influences that when they get here to this plane, they seem novel, they seem new, they seem against what is current, right? And so something that is not even trendy, but that could become trendy or break a trend. I like to view it as make it make sense energy. Something that is way out there that when it comes here, someone has to make it make sense, break the status quo, break the norm of the reality, and then we could all, go along with this new normal. But it's never a new normal because it's never anything that most people really quickly jump on board to. It takes quite some time for it to become status quo, right? So the Uranus energy always seems to be against status quo. I don't know if because it's a bit futuristic, or just that the information is seemingly coming from higher planes or higher dimensions. And so just different forms of technology that may not have existed in the past, and they seem revolutionary, they seem new, novel, like credit cards, the internet, AI. We see all of that as a sort of Uranian type of energy. Initially, however, after some time it could become norm, right? But anything that seems rebellious, anything that seems against status quo, anything that seems, going contrary to what is, the now. And so just think about everything that we said. It seems a bit chaotic, right? On one hand, it could be cool for the individual that, you could create a certain uniqueness or individuality about you because you do things that other people don't do, right? But we have to put this not only on a macro level for the individual, but it impacts us all. And so maybe a concept or an idea, ideology that is against the norm, right? Something shocking, something, obscure or obscene. Like, what is this thing that is happening? That is happening, right? We're trying to make sense of it in the moment, and Mars is bringing in this heat, this intensity, this implosion, this explosion, pressing and checking and being quite infuriated about what's happening, and all of this is happening in the Gemini space. And so to mush it all together, because this is the highlight of the week, coming from the full moon, Jupiter going into Leo, so this is in the public arena, and then Gemini space, which is derives all of characteristics and traits from the third house. We need to say that because the space is most important, and so we know that the third house is also a public arena, in some way, shape, or form, because it's the house of siblings, brothers, local vicinity, communicating and processing information and experiences that you have in your local geographical location. Unlike Sagittarius, which is higher heights and broader horizons, which may take you overseas or interacting with people of different cultures and traditions. the Gemini space is more, okay, your neighbors, your local communities, your brothers and sisters, XYZ. And so, depending on what house you're having this in, it's going to affect you differently, but it seems that what is going to happen with this conjunction is quite localized, right? We know that the Gemini space again deals with, or the overarching theme in my view is the wisdom, right, from the experiences again. So the wisdom, so experience things are going to happen, right, physically, for you to get knowledge, for you to be able to apply it as wisdom later on, hence after. And so Uranus seems to shock us each and every time. It's not something that we could fully calibrate in the moment, which we may try to rely on past knowledge and past understanding and past wisdom. But Uranus, again, is kind of, when it gets here, when the influences get to us, it's like novel, it's like new, it's like, oh my God, I was trying to be as prepared for this. And there we go, some like more curves to the curve bomb. It's literally the planet that is sideways. And so things may seem to go sideways. You may seem to have to, you know, adapt and weave. And we know Mercury, being mercurial, is being mutable and flexible and adaptable. And so on a higher octane is like it forces you to be adaptable in the moment, and then you develop, the hindsight afterwards. And so Mars conjuncting the heat, the intensity of a shocking thing happening in your local vicinity, or something that is localized to you, could be quite, intense. So that's something to also look out for as we conclude this week. I think that happens. Man, I really wish I had my note, but I think those are like the major highlights. And then as we progress, of course, there's going to be different aspects to the sun. For example, I know that the sun is going to be aspecting Saturn. I think it's a square on the 6th. And so we just need to be, how could you prepare for something shocking, right? Other than just, knowing that something shocking could occur, right? And just having that understanding that there's a certain level of unknown, right? There's a certain level, let's put it this way, there's a certain level of flexibility and adaptability that we always need to have. We need to always be ready to, be called to action, whether it is in a defensive way or in a, offensive way. Again, trying to blend everything all together. Jupiter in Leo, this public arena, everything that's happening in Gemini in terms of Mars, and Uranus is sort of public facing as well. Sun is in Cancer, which is in the home life. And so is it things from the home life kind of expanding and bleeding out a bit more? Again, we talked about you trying to be selective about those things, but Uranus in Gemini seems to suggest that things may be out of our control, and we could try to do, the containment, or the recalibration or the adjustment, over the course of time or in hindsight. But, on that conjunction point, I don't know exactly where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing, but hopefully when it conjuncts, there's something shocking, there's some intensity to this Uranus space. We could be on the positive side of the energies. I'm trying to think how we could get down and dirty in like a positive way, because we know that Mars is passion, your willpower, and so there's a certain level of intensity, a certain level of drive, passion, right? Which could be contagious. Mars, I don't want to make up any history, but I think the Romans worshiped Mars so heavily, and they praised, the fact that they could make great speeches. Well, this transpired through all history, but people who could get so passionate and communicate, right? Which is a Mars and Gemini type of thing. You passionately communicate, hot ears, which is contagious. People feel your message and could get rallied by that cry of action. And so that's what I'm thinking about, just this passionate communication that is influential, that could spur or stir people to do the shocking thing, right? The Uranus energy, the rebellious thing. And so is it a call to action for a revolt, a revolution, a transformation? Is it a call for action for people to dive into something just a bit different, obscure, not normal? Those are things that start to come into my mind. Anyway, I don't want to make this video too long-winded. I need to go charge up the laptop and see if we could come back with some content, some more down and dirty videos. This one was amazing because we didn't have any notes. We were just raw dogging it, and that was fascinating mental exercises. Also, check out the monthly forecast because we did a whole monthly, and so we already have, what's to come. I'm just trying to give a bit of a weekly. I feel a bit that I can't really recite and remember everything that's happening, but we know that, full moon, so 14 days after full moon, moon should be going down to the new moon, and so that's going to be maybe the midway in July. So we're not quite there yet. We need to focus on these big hurdles: full moon, Jupiter into Leo, Mars conjunct in Uranus. Hopefully we survive and thrive and come back and be able to testify and talk about it. Anyway, I hope the audio experience on this video was okay. Silly me, I didn't even turn the video sideways, but I hope that the visuals are okay as well. Making some plans to get some equipment so we could have a better experience here on the channel. But I hope you find this helpful, useful, or for the most part, a little entertaining. Could make you smile a while and give your face a goddamn rest, because you deserve it. All right, guys, major farewell until we meet or greet again. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video and anything that we could do to make the content, more helpful, useful, or entertaining. Drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you could stay up to date or up to the time with the astrological vibe. And I'll see you all in the next video. Better believe it.